Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Guess who hasn't done a wrap up of any of the books she's read this year? Me. I don't even know the number of books that I've read since the beginning of this year. I think it's like 17. So I think I'm just going to either split this in two or rush through it. I'm not 100% sure yet. If there is a part two, I will put it on the screen here just so you know. But yeah. So I don't want to have too long of an intro because I definitely want to have time to talk about these books. I'm not going to talk very much about them, but I kind of wanted to tell you my rating and my thoughts because I do love books. So without further ado, let's get right on into it. So to start with the first book I read at the beginning of this year, because again, I hadn't posted any sort of review since the books I read in December. The first one is Fortuna Sworn by KJ Sutton. I ended up giving this 3.5 stars. I didn't love it, and I kind of didn't love it the whole way through. I do think it has some redeeming qualities about it, but it just wasn't enough for me to want to read the rest of the series. It is marketed as fantasy romance, but there is literally no romance in the first book. I mean, you can obviously tell that there's going to be romance in the second book. And I did love, there was like a cliffhanger moment where there was a twist and you didn't learn till the very end. And I was a little intrigued by all that stuff, but like, it just wasn't enough. And it felt like a knockoff of Akatar when Fair, or Farah, however you say your name, I always say Fair because I don't like the name Farah. When she's under the mountain and doing those tasks, you have a lot of similarities here. And it just felt like a worse version of that. So that is why I didn't love it. Do I think it was a bad book? No, it didn't do it for me. So yeah. The next book, I loved this book so much. This is called The Bright and Breaking Sea by Chloe Neal, I think is how you say her last name. This is one of those books where I was walking through Barnes & Noble and stumbled upon this cover, and I thought the cover looked amazing and the reviews were great. So I put it on my Christmas list and Sam got it for me for Christmas. I loved this book. Do I think it was the best book ever? No, but it was exactly what I needed at the time. I gave it 5 stars. And if you follow my reviews at all or my wrap-ups, you know that I don't give things 5 stars very often, mainly because I want to save the 5-star rating for like my all-time favorite books or like seriously like favorite books. Like, I don't know why. It's just something I like to do. It's not right or wrong. It's just what I like to do. But I love this book so much. So basically, this takes place in like like an alternate universe 1800s London, England area. And we have these people that are not very common, but they are aligned with a certain element. And our main character, Kit, she's the captain of a ship. It's so like, obviously, as you can see in the cover, it's a little piratey, and I really liked that. And she is aligned with the ocean. And I loved the way the author described her like alignment with the ocean and the way she feels the ocean and all that kind of stuff. It was so beautifully done. But this book also has one of my favorite tropes where you have two very unwilling people being forced to work together. That hits home. I love that trope so much. The unwilling, because you know it's gonna create a lot of great tension and it's obviously gonna turn romantic, and obviously it did. There was basically only little bits of romance or a hint at the romance. It definitely got to the point where our love interest was like kind of like touch her and I'll kill you vibes, and I'm like, oh, this is everything I wanted. But essentially the plot is there's a big bad going on over there, and you know it's going to come into the picture later on, and they have like a smaller plot where they're trying to go save somebody who has been captured by pirates, and it's just a lot of swashbuckling action, and I loved it so much. I loved our main character. She was one of my favorite main characters ever. I loved our love interest, Ryan, and I can't wait to see what he becomes in the future and stuff like that. He was like grumpy. So we had like, it's not like grumpy like Sunshine, like they're both kind of grumpy, but he's like really grumpy and she's just like determined and doesn't care about his grumpiness. Anyway, loved it so much. I could talk about that forever. The next book on the list is The Widow of Rose House. Now this is written by Diana Biller. This was one of those books where I think I was on like some sort of Goodreads list of like gothic romance, because I wanted to read some more gothic romance books. It's one of my favorite genres, but I feel like it's not written very often in this day and age, and it had pretty good reviews, so I wanted to pick it up. And basically the setup of the story is our main character, Alva. She is moving back to New York where she previously grew up, but she had been married. They moved to Europe. Her husband died. No one knows how or why, and she moved back, and so it's kind of created a scandal. People don't know why her husband died. if she was the cause of it, all this kind of stuff. It's created a scandal and people talk about her and don't say very nice things. So she has some money and she buys this house that is rumored to be haunted, and she wants to fix it up because she wants to publish a design book, essentially like a home design book, and she wants to be a published author, and she wants to continue on and do home design and stuff like that. So we have a definite sense of Grumpy X Sunshine, but it is reversed this time. Our Grump is our main character and our Sunshine is our love interest. What's his name again? Oh, his name is Sam, just like my husband. And we are a little bit Grumpy X Sunshine too. He's Sunshine, I'm Grump. He is like interested in her from the beginning, and she's kind of like, get off, get off, get off. And you know she dealt with some serious trauma, so you kind of fully understand why she is a little bit hesitant to that kind of an idea right now. She's kind of just like doesn't want to talk to men. Obviously there's some spooky stuff that happens in the house. There's also another character who from her past that tries to come in and shake things up, and he's a little spooky too. But we have a very, very, very sweet romance between Sam and Alva. He is so patient with her and he is so kind and gentle with her, and all he wants to do is like make sure she's okay from the very beginning. And it was so well done. I gave this 4 stars. I really liked it. One of the reasons it was a 4-star for me was because I was kind of hoping for more spook and a little bit more edgy romance, because that's what I prefer. With that being said, I think the romance was perfect, and I can't really fault it for not being as spooky as I want it to be, but it was truly a fantastic read. I highly recommend it if you like a little bit of gothic romance. Plus the smut was really well done, and it was also long. Like, I feel like it was like 2.5 chapters worth of it. So, of the first time. So anyway, that's all I have to say for that one. Okay, the next book I read, and I gotta say, I loved this. And this is Bad Bachelor by Stephanie London. I honestly didn't know what to expect with this because it doesn't really have mixed reviews, but the average on Goodreads is 3.73. And usually I get a little bit concerned if like a romance book has a lower average than like 3.75, because I'm extremely incredibly picky with romances. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because they are contemporary, and in order for me to subscribe to this contemporary romance, like it has to be super realistic, and if it's not, then I'd rather just read a romance and a fantasy. Does that make sense? I don't know. Didn't really make sense to me. I don't know why I just said that, but in the end, I'm just a mess. So I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. So the premise of this book is that there is an online platform for women to go to rate their experiences with these Manhattan bachelors, and to kind of like warn other women, or like say like, oh, he was great in bed, or like, oh, he was really, really sweet, we just didn't work out. Essentially to kind of inform other women. In theory, is it a good idea? Not really in theory, actually. I understand the idea though, to support other women, to help other women. It is extremely toxic, and you kind of understand that from the beginning of the book, that it's a very toxic concept. But you have a PR whiz with a newfound bad reputation in our love interest, and then you have this edgy librarian with tattoos. I loved her so much. Their worlds collide when she needs help essentially saving this library, and he ends up being the PR guy to try and save this library. From the moment they met, there was just loads and loads of chemistry. I absolutely adored their encounters, their banter. It made me laugh multiple times. The things he would say would catch me off guard. I would chuckle, I would giggle, I would smile, and I loved it. His backstory was like really, really well done in my opinion. He has a little bit of trauma, and the way the author described it and the way the author like put it into the story, I feel like was perfect timing, really well done. And yeah, the only problem I had with this book, the reason it didn't get 5 stars, was because our main character Darcy did have like I'm not like other girl vibes. It wasn't like thrown into your face, but there were a couple of mentions that pissed me off. Like, I think one time her and Reed, the love interest name is Reed, they were at a bar and she like had made a comment, I don't know if it was verbal or in her mind, like as the narrator, saying like she was gonna order a burger because she didn't like salads because she's not like other girls, essentially. And I was just like, I hate those kinds of comments, because you can eat whatever the hell you want and enjoy whatever the hell you want and be just as valid of a girl as a different girl. If you want a burger, whatever. If you want a salad, whatever. If you want freaking 10 plates of fries, that's fine too. Besides the not like other girl vibes, I did really like her, and I thought their romance was very much good. And I want you guys to read this book if you enjoy contemporary romance. The next thing I finished was Cress by Marissa Meyer. This is the third in the Lunar Chronicles series, and to be honest, in Goodreads, I gave it 3 stars, not 6, 3. I said review to come, never wrote a review. I felt very detached to this story. The second book I loved. I loved Scarlet. I think I reviewed it back in my last wrap up from December, and I really liked it. I gave it a 4.5 stars, and I loved the romance between Wolf and Scarlet. I thought they were perfect because it had like a lot of tropes that I liked. Like one of my favorite tropes ever is like, you're not sure if that person's gonna betray you or not, and they had a lot of those vibes. Anyways, I loved the story. I really liked the way that the story became a little bit heavier, more mature in that book. This kind of made it feel way young again. I don't have personal problems with Cress, the main character, but she just is nothing like me, and it was very, very hard to read because it felt like I was reading a 14-year-old's perspective, and obviously I'm well past that time in my life at this point. But it was not objectively a bad book. It didn't do it for me. It wasn't for me. Did I continue on with the series? Yes, but I didn't love it, and I was really excited because I love the love interest. Why am I forgetting his name all of a sudden? This is gonna piss me off. Carswell? I don't remember what. Thorn is what they call him. Thorn, right? I think they call him Thorn. He's super fun. He's got a lot of banter, and I really liked it, but she was just like head over heels in love with him before she even met him, and it rubbed me the wrong way. I did like the development in the plot in this book, but it was very slow. Okay, so my camera battery died, and I just charged it for 20 minutes, so I'm hoping that I can get through the rest of what I need to get through before it dies again. I don't remember exactly what I was saying about Cress, but essentially, do I think objectively it's a bad book? No, it just didn't really do it for me, and yeah, didn't love it. I ended up doing it on audiobook. 3 stars. All right, let's move on. The next thing I read this was the middle of February-ish, and I read All Things Burn by Jody Slaughter. I ended up DNFing this at 50%. It was kind of like the cover, as you can see, and kind of the description makes it seem like it's gonna kind of be a dark romance, and it ended up not really being that. We have like a main character who is like running from a psycho ex kind of, and then our love interest is an assassin, and I was really excited about this, like really excited, and I was just really let down. It kind of put me into reading slump, and in the end, I'm just not going to force myself to read it if it wasn't giving me good vibes and it was putting me in a reading slump. Do I think it's a bad book? No. Do I think others will enjoy it? Yes, just didn't do it for me. The next thing I read was A Game of Fate. This is by Scarlett St. Clair. This is Hades' version of A Touch of Darkness. I really, really enjoy A Touch of Darkness, and the sequel, A Touch of Ruin. I didn't love this. Some people in the reviews were saying like, oh, read this. A lot of stuff happens in this book that didn't happen in A Touch of Darkness. That's just not true. That's a lie. Because everything that happened in this book was stuff we already read about, and it was nice getting Hades' perspective on some things, but I didn't care much. And also, one of my gripes on this series, which I do really like, I want you to know that I really, really like this series, and I'm really excited for the next one, which comes out soon here. These two think sex fixes everything, and it just doesn't. I'm gonna tell you honestly, it doesn't. You gotta talk. You gotta talk. But anyway, it wasn't a bad book. It just felt unnecessary, and yeah, I still really adore the series, and I can't wait for the next one. The next book I read was Bitter Blue. This is by Kristen Kishore. This is the third in the Graceling Realm series. I was rereading this to prepare for Winterkeep, which I still haven't read, but I want to. It came out in January, I think. Bitter Blue takes one of our side characters from Graceling, and she's the main character in this book. I had read this, but not since its release date, which was like, I don't know, it probably came out like in at least like 2012, so it's been a very long time. I don't remember how I felt about it back then. I remember it being my least favorite out of the 3, but that's about all I remember. I didn't love it. I gave it a 2.5 star, which is shocking because both Fire and Graceling by Kristen Kishore are 2 of my all-time favorite books. She's one of my favorite authors ever. For Bitter Blue, I honestly feel like there just wasn't really that much of a plot, and the romance is a subplot, which is fine, and it was really good the first half of the book, and then the second half it just sucked, to be honest with you. It's hard because both Graceling and Fire are like epic fantasy books with epic plots, and Bitter Blue is more court politics and political intrigue, and it didn't do much for me. And yeah, it just had a lot of lackluster side characters when Graceling and Fire have such incredible side characters. So 2.5 stars. I don't think it's a bad book. I'm glad I reread it so that when I do read Winterkeep, that stuff is fresh in my mind, because I know that Bitter Blue is a character in Winterkeep, I think. Anyway, yeah, I just opened the blinds a little bit more because I feel like it was getting dark in here. So if the lighting just changed, that's why. The next thing I read was Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey. This is the 3rd book in the like Fix Her Up series, I think is what it's called. I actually haven't read the first 2. I think there's like Fix Her Up and then there's one other one. I specifically read this because I saw Chandler Ainsley like kind of gushing about it on Instagram, and I messaged her and I said, do you need to have read the first 2 in order to enjoy this one? And she said, no, not really. So I picked it up. I really liked it. I gave it 3.5 stars. Basically, you have this younger guy. I think he's like in his early 20s. And then you have like, I can't remember her exact age, but I want to say like a 30, 31-year-old female protagonist. So I really liked how they dealt with that because, you know, obviously most of the stories we read about are the guy's a little bit older and the girl's a little bit younger, and it was nice to kind of have a flip the script in that sense. I will say that I think you should read the first 2 books beforehand because it's pretty clear from some of the reviews that I've read and also just where the story picked up in this book that some of the flirting that had gone on between these 2 characters definitely starts in, I don't know if it's the middle book or the first book or whatever, but I think I still enjoyed it very much not having read the first 2. They had lots of chemistry, which I loved, and it was really fun watching their romance develop. This book did tackle some heavy topics, and I feel like it did it really well. I think it touches on, like, if I remember correctly, like a little bit of OCD and anxiety rep and stuff like that, and I just think overall it was a fun book. It was a solid read. I wasn't fully in love. That's why I got 3.5 stars, but I think overall I did very much enjoy it. So the next book I read is called Dustbourn, and this is by Erin Bowman. This comes out later this year. It's an arc that I read. Let me find the date here. April 20th, so it actually comes out pretty soon here. So this is a fast-paced YA post-apocalyptic standalone, which I didn't know it was a standalone going into this. But it is unique and fun, and it gives off a lot of Mad Max vibes. In this world, water is extremely limited, and there are dust storms and all that kind of stuff. It's not a very safe world to live in. Basically, they are one day hoping that they can find this epic city called the Verdant, or the Verdant. And since she was young, our main character, Delta, has a map branded on her back, but no one can read the map. So they're waiting for one day somebody who is like star touched or something like that, who can read the map and then take them all to this place called the Verdant. There were parts of this book I really enjoyed. Most of it just felt kind of okay to me. I enjoyed the vibes of the story and the setting. I enjoyed the twist. I feel like the author did a good job of like her writing. Like I enjoyed her writing. I do think this book could have benefited from being a duology. I think you could have written a lot of it, and then when the twist happens, like kind of have it be a cliffhanger ending, and then it described the rest of the stuff in the second book. I feel like it would have benefited much better from that. Also, to those of you who are sensitive to animal cruelty or torture or stuff like that in books, there's a part around the 65% mark where it kind of feels extremely senseless. Our main character kills, I think it's a hawk or something like that. I'm okay with, I know that I'm very sensitive towards this stuff, but if characters need to hunt and eat and stuff like that, obviously to stay alive, I'm totally okay with that stuff. I don't want it detailed in the book, but obviously if it's talked about, that's fine. But when it's a senseless act of murder or torture or anything like that, I do get very upset, because it's like, that was just unnecessary. Like, you didn't need to unnecessarily kill an animal. So anyway, that's how I feel about that. The next book was a contemporary romance and is called How to Fail at Flirting by Denise Williams. This fell between a 2.5 and a 3 star for me, and I still don't know how I feel about it. And now it's been long enough where I can't even make a decision between the two, because it's been like 6 weeks since I read it. This book, I don't even remember exactly what it's about, but I think she's like a professor at a college, and this guy comes into town for a wedding of his friends, and I think they meet that way. Basically, I love their meet cute. Oh no, yeah. Okay, so basically I love their meet cute because she is trying to like write a list of things in order to kind of like break her walls down and go live a little and stuff like that. And one of her things was to have like a meaningless hookup. So she meets him at a bar, and he's from out of town and stuff like that. And their meet cute was so, I loved it. It was so adorable. And I, like the first 25% of the book, I put in my review, I was rather invested for the first 30 to 40% of the book. So there you go. There's the real tea on that. I said the story was interesting and I loved Naya and Jake's meet cute. And I thought the way that Naya was trying to break out of her shell was done really well. But I think because I loved the first 30 to 40% of the book so much, that's why I was so disappointed in the last 60-ish%. The pacing was off because they got together so quick that it left us little to root for in the second half of the story. And Naya has like an ex-boyfriend who is trying to ruin her life, and you spent this whole time wondering when he was going to come back into the picture, and when he eventually does, like, it doesn't mean as much anymore because you thought about it this whole time. Anyway, I don't want to like spoil anything. Despite my issues, I don't think it's a bad book. I think a lot of people did enjoy this book. It just wasn't particularly for me. And yeah, there is a content warning for like domestic, physical, and mental abuse. This is past experiences, but it is described in detail. So I would look it up if I were you before you read it. That's all I have to say. The next book I read is The Girl in the Tower. This is the second book in the Winter Night trilogy. I did read The Bear and the Nightingale in December, so I talked about that in that wrap-up, that last wrap-up. I fell in love with this series from this book. I really, really, really loved the first book, but it wasn't everything to me. This book was everything to me. I ate it up. I tabbed the hell out of it. It is so good. It is so fantastic. I'm in love with Vasya. I think she's one of my favorite protagonists, if not my favorite protagonist ever in a book. I love Morozko. I love their connection. There was so much angst between them and edginess between their relationship, and I just love the dynamic and intricate personality that the author created for Morozko and all that he has come from and who he is now. I just love this world. I never want to be a part of it because it's freezing and it's evil, but I love the world. I loved being inside the world in the book. But yeah, I mean, I cried a bunch of times in this book and it was just brilliant. I cried for mostly sad things, but it is worth it. I promise you it is worth it. It is so good. It is so atmospheric. It is just brilliantly done, and I highly, highly, highly recommend. The next one is The Winter of the Witch, which is the third and final book in the Bear and the Nightingale series, or the Winter Nights trilogy, whatever it's called. I gave this 5 stars. I'm kind of at a loss for words because it was so perfect. I cried multiple times for it being sad and heartbreaking, but also so beautiful. There were so many beautiful moments, and Vasya's story in this entire trilogy is one of my favorite, most beautiful, entrancing, most magical stories I've ever read. I highly, highly, highly recommend this. The trilogy alone was one of the most compelling things I've ever read. I'm so happy I've gotten to know Vasya and Morozko and all the characters in this story, and I just want you to know it's like a new favorite series of all time. So it's definitely, definitely, definitely up there, and I definitely recommend it, and I want all of you to experience it. So please do. The next thing I read, I actually did this on audiobook, and it is Fairest, which is the like book 3.5 in the Lunar Chronicle series. This is a prequel. This is Lavana's story, and Lavana is the villain, if you didn't know. I didn't even write a review. I gave it 2 stars. I couldn't care less. Truly is the problem. Like, it was a little uncomfortable at certain points, the way she kind of like manipulated, I forget his name, Everett, the one she ends up marrying, and then the one who's the father of Winter. It's just, it wasn't my favorite, wasn't for me, and at that point I just read it so that I could have read the whole thing and read the whole series. And I do think it is important to understand the story, but it's not a bad book objectively. It just, I didn't care anymore. I didn't care about it anymore. The next book is an ARC, which comes out later this year. Let me find the date because I'm really excited about this one. It comes out August 10th, and it is called The Devil Makes 3, and this is by Tori Bovalino, I don't know. I gave this 4.5 stars. I really, really, really like this. It is so good. It is a YA gothic horror with a slight hint of romance. Well, actually the romance is a pretty strong subplot, but basically you have our main character who is a student at a boarding school. And one of the things I love about boarding schools is obviously dark academia vibes, but also I can kind of pretend it's like college-y. So my brain can kind of be like, oh, I relate to this character more because they're a little bit older. But it definitely reads more on the older end of YA. We have this main character who attends this boarding school. It is the summertime, so there's not as many people there. And then you have our other main character who is adorable, so cute. I love him. Very much Gainsey vibes, by the way, from the Raven Boys. British boy, unwillingly living in the States, also going to this boarding school. And they basically accidentally invite a devil or a demon or the devil into their realm. Most of the book takes place in a library, which just so many great dark academia vibes. There is a lot of spookiness with it. It is very descriptive sometimes. So if you don't like horror, I would maybe stay away from this, but if you enjoy like a gothic horror-y vibes and more on the YA scale of things, I think you would really like this. The romance is so sweet. Their dynamic was so incredibly done. His feelings and her feelings develop at a different pace, but I feel like it is done so well, and they actually like talk about it, which is just brilliant. And one of my favorite parts about this book was the dark atmosphere. I think it was described so well. It is eerie and spooky, and you feel all these things around you as you're reading it. And yeah, I just think you guys are really gonna like it. I really want you to put this on your radar. It was so good. And the last book I have read, I can't believe I've gotten through all these. Okay, it is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. So I gave this a 4.5. It was so close to a 5-star. But as I've said before, I'm extremely picky when it comes to contemporary romances, or romances in general. The only romance that I've given a full 5 stars is to Bring Down the Duke by Evie Dunmore, and that's obviously not contemporary, it's historical, but it's the only romance book I've given 5 stars to. And I'm not trying to say that to sound cool, like I don't know why I am this way, I'm just extremely picky, I don't know. But I know that they're making a movie about this, so I was like super inclined to read it soon because I'm like, I want to know what's going on with the movie. I know the movie's in post-production now, which means it's going to be coming out sometime this year. And obviously this book has such good reviews. So I was like, I have to read this. It literally locked me in from the very first page. I loved the writing style that was incorporated into this book. One of the most charming parts about this book was being in Lucy's head, and you get that from the very beginning. It felt like a movie from the very beginning. I just loved it so much. Lucy and Josh had chemistry from the very first encounter we saw. It's just, oh, it was so good. Obviously, it's important to note that a lot of the themes in this book are slightly toxic when their relationship was essentially built on playing games to kind of like screw the other up or mess each other up and whatever. And they obviously started out hating each other. But I think it's so obvious to tell that there are very deep feelings. They just, neither of them are aware of them, and that's why they express them in these ways. I loved this book so much. It is one of my favorite, all-time favorite romances. I think honestly, I'm trying to think if there's a romance on my shelves I think my favorite romance is Bring Down the Duke, obviously. My second favorite are like Bad Bachelor and this one, like Hating Game. I think like they're kind of, I love them both equally and stuff. It was just so good. Definitely recommend this to all romance readers. So if you haven't read it, which everyone and their dog has already read it, but if you hadn't, now's the time. Okay, so those are all the books I read literally since January 1st because I forgot to do a wrap up since then. This is probably gonna be quite a long video, so if you made it to the very end, thank you. I love you for it. If you have any thoughts and feelings about the books that I've read, or if we share any thoughts, or if you disagree or whatever, let me know down in the comments below. I love chatting with you guys down there, so hit me up down there. And also, if you haven't already and you want to subscribe, you should join the family. And yeah, like this video if you thought it was fun. And anyways, I'm gonna let you guys go. Have a great morning, noon, evening, day, night, whatever happens to be that you're watching this, and I will see you in my next one. Bye.